You know, it's a rather curious thing that the moment a person begins to wake up, not in some mystical flash of lightning, but in that quiet, unmistakable shift of inner clarity, the world around them reacts in the strangest ways. And one of the first reactions, almost invariably, is that they begin attracting the very people who challenge them the most. People who cling, who drain, who misunderstand, who project, who resist. People who seem, in some odd fashion, allergic to the light yet irresistibly drawn to it. Now, why should this be so? Well, imagine for a moment that you are a lantern carried through a great dark forest. Not a blazing torch, mind you. No, simply a soft, warm lantern. Enough to see by. Enough to illuminate a few steps ahead. Enough to remind others, wandering through the same darkness, that light is possible. The moment that light appears, everyone around you sees themselves more clearly. And that is the very thing most people have spent their entire lives avoiding. For the light, you see, does not discriminate. It reveals the delicate as well as the grotesque, the beauty as well as the shadow, the hopes as well as the fears. And so the spiritually awakened person becomes a mirror, an unintentional one, held up to others simply by being themselves. Now, most people don't like mirrors. They prefer costumes, identities, masks. They like to believe they are what they pretend to be. But a person who has awakened, even just a little, has dropped many of these pretenses. They wear fewer masks. They speak from a place of stillness. They do not play the usual games. And this, you see, is terribly uncomfortable for someone who is still deeply invested in their performance. So what often happens is that the awakened person becomes a sort of gravitational force, not because they seek attention, but because they radiate something others have long forgotten. A quiet authenticity, a simple presence, a freedom from striving. And people are drawn to that, thirsty for it, yet at the same time frightened by it, for such presence exposes the artificiality of their own lives. Toxic individuals, if we may use that modern word, are not born that way. They are simply people who have constructed very thick walls around their own pain. And when they encounter someone who sees without judgment, who listens without trying to fix, who stands without needing to dominate, they feel something trembling inside themselves, something long neglected. That trembling is the beginning of awakening, but it feels at first like threat, because suddenly the games they have mastered no longer work. They cannot manipulate a person who sees through manipulation. They cannot guilt trip one who is no longer motivated by fear. They cannot dominate someone who is not trying to win. They cannot confuse a person who has learned to sit comfortably with uncertainty. So, faced with the awakened person, they often behave in one of two ways. They cling, hoping to draw from the awakened person the peace they cannot find within themselves. Or they react with hostility because the awakened presence destabilizes the identity they are trying to defend. This clinging or hostility is what we commonly call toxic, but it is only a symptom of something deeper, a profound discomfort with authenticity. Now you might wonder, but why me? Why must I attract such people? Why must I carry this burden? But you see, you don't attract them as a punishment. You attract them because your presence reveals something, because you are no longer participating in the unconscious dance, because your quiet contains a truth that their noise cannot drown out. And there's another point, subtler still. People who are awakening tend to radiate a kind of softness, not weakness, mind you, but softness, a gentleness, a compassion, a willingness to listen, a lowered guard. This is tremendously inviting to people who have spent their lives crashing against hard surfaces, conflict, control, power struggles. Your openness becomes a doorway through which they attempt to walk, though often without the awareness or maturity to enter respectfully. Just as a thirsty person may drink too quickly and choke, a wounded person may approach too desperately and wound again. Your presence touches something raw in them. But here is the curious paradox. In the early stages of awakening, most people do not yet know how to set boundaries. They know how to see clearly, yes. How to feel deeply, yes. How to understand intuitively, yes. But they do not yet know how to protect their energy. They have awakened, but they have not yet rooted. They feel more, but they have not yet strengthened. They are open, but not yet grounded. And so the awakened person becomes a lantern with no glass casing around the flame. Any wind may blow in, any hand may reach too close, any wandering soul may try to warm themselves by your fire, even if their presence disturbs the flame. The world senses your softness, your empathy, your awareness, and many people mistake these for a willingness to carry their unresolved burdens. Not because you asked for them, but because you seem capable. Let me tell you something strange. People often give their heaviest burdens to the one who looks most likely to understand. Not the strongest, not the bravest, not the loudest, but the one who sees gently. And so the awakened attract the unhealed. The conscious attract the unconscious. The present attracts the distracted. The peaceful attract the chaotic. This is not a flaw. It is not a sign that something is wrong with you. It is simply the natural consequence of awakening in a world still largely asleep. But, and this is crucial, you must learn what the lantern eventually learns. That light is not meant to be dimmed in order to comfort those who fear illumination. You are not here to save everyone who stumbles into your glow, nor are you here to give warmth to those who would extinguish your flame if they could. There comes a moment, a very beautiful moment, when the awakened person stops absorbing the wounds of others and begins simply witnessing them. Stops trying to fix and begins simply understanding. Stops taking responsibility and begins simply being. For that is the essence of awakening, to see clearly without becoming entangled. And it is from this moment, this shift, that your relationship with the so-called toxic people of the world begins to change. And so, you see, when one begins to wake up, something rather curious happens. You no longer dance the same steps as the crowd around you. You start moving to a subtler rhythm, one that is not dictated by fear or approval or the endless striving to be somebody. Instead, you move from a sort of inner stillness, a trust, a soft but unmistakable awareness. And people notice. Not because you're trying to be noticed, but because your very existence begins to reveal the sleep of others. When you stop playing the game, everyone still playing it becomes uncomfortable. And this discomfort, this subtle trembling in the ego, has an odd way of attracting exactly the kinds of people who cannot bear their own reflection. For the awakened do not shine with blinding light. They shine with quiet truth. And truth, for many, is intolerable. You see, most people do not want honesty. They want reinforcement. They want someone who will confirm their illusions, polish their masks, and reassure them that the prison they live in is actually a palace. When you in your clarity refuse to participate in their delusions, they don't quite know what to do with you. Part of them admires you, part of them resents you, and part of them, perhaps the largest part, tries to pull you back into the dream they are afraid to wake up from. Thus the awakened attract the lost, the wounded, the hungry, not because they need saving, but because these people sense, often unconsciously, the possibility of release, and any hint of freedom is intoxicating. But here lies the paradox. The very thing that draws them to you is the thing they are terrified of. For when you awaken, you cannot be controlled. You cannot be manipulated, coaxed, or guilt-tripped in the usual fashion. You don't respond to emotional traps. You don't absorb other people's projections the way they expect you to. You simply see them for what they are, smoke. And when someone who depends on illusion encounters someone who sees clearly, they react not with gratitude, but with fear. Fear disguised as attachment. Fear disguised as desire. Fear disguised as love. Have you noticed this? That some people cling to you not because they cherish you, but because they believe you can soothe the pain they refuse to face? They imagine that your calmness can quiet their inner storm, that your openness can heal their closed-off heart, that your acceptance will erase their shame. But this is impossible, for what they truly seek is not you, but escape from themselves. And escape, you see, is never love. Yet you, in your awakening, often make the mistake of believing you can help them. You think, if I remain patient, if I offer enough compassion, if I extend enough understanding, perhaps they will rise to meet me. But the truth is, awakening is not contagious in the way a cold is. You cannot give consciousness to another person like a gift wrapped in bright paper. They must choose it again and again through the discomfort and chaos that truth requires. And so the awakened become, quite unintentionally, magnets for the very people who are threatened by their clarity. Why? Because unconscious people instinctively seek energy sources outside themselves. They latch on to awakened individuals like vines clinging to a tree, hoping to be lifted without growing roots of their own. And the more grounded you are, the more you appear to them as a stable foundation on which to build their unsteady sense of self. But awakened people are not foundations. They are mirrors. And a mirror is the most dangerous thing you can offer someone who does not want to see themselves. For when the wounded look at you, they glimpse the distance between what they are and what they could become. And that distance is painful. They may admire you at first, praising your kindness, your presence, your depth. Yet soon enough, that admiration turns into envy, resentment, or dependency. It is not uncommon for the awakened to wonder, why do I attract people who drain me? Why do I become the healer, the therapist, the teacher without wanting to? Why does my light call forth other people's shadows? Because, my dear friend, that is what light does. Light shows the dust floating in the room. It reveals what was already there. It does not create the dust. It merely makes it visible. And those who fear their own dust will blame the light for exposing it. This is why so many awakened souls feel lonely. Not because they are unloved, but because they can no longer participate in the unconscious bargains most people call relationships. The awakened reject the silent agreements that go something like, I will avoid my insecurities if you avoid yours. I will pretend to be who you want me to be if you do the same for me. I will not challenge your illusions if you will not challenge mine. You see, there is a quiet rebellion in awakening, a refusal to pretend anymore. And this refusal, though natural and healthy, unravels the hidden contracts that toxic individuals depend on. They need someone who will play their script, someone who will dance their choreography of control, guilt, emotional instability, and unspoken expectations. But when you awaken, you tear up the script, you put down the costume, you walk off the stage, and suddenly they panic. For without your participation, their drama collapses. So the awakened, ironically, are seen by toxic people as both a threat and a possibility, a threat to their identity and a possibility for transformation. They are drawn like moths to a flame, knowing on some primal level that coming close will burn them, yet unable to resist the warmth. And you and your kindness often keep the flame steady for those who have no intention of stepping into the light themselves. You give and they take. You understand and they confuse. You soften and they harden. And slowly you begin to wonder whether something is wrong with you. But nothing is wrong. You are simply glowing in a world afraid of illumination. The real challenge, you see, is not attracting such people. It's learning to discern who is approaching you out of curiosity and who is approaching you out of hunger. Some are drawn to your presence because it awakens a recognition in them, a whisper of their own inner truth. Others come because they feel empty and hope you can fill the void. But the awakened are not here to be vessels for emptiness. They are here to remind others of their own fullness. And that reminder is not always welcome. There is a great misunderstanding in the spiritual world that awakening makes life easier. On the contrary, it often complicates things. You begin to feel more deeply, sense more clearly, and see more sharply. You notice the cracks in people's stories, the tremors beneath their smiles, the defense mechanisms behind their anger. And while you don't judge them, you cannot unsee what you've seen. This perception can be a double-edged sword. It helps you love more truly, and it exposes, painfully, those who cannot love in return. But do not let this discourage you, for attracting the wrong people is not a sign of your failure. It is a sign of your transformation. The awakened are like tuning forks. They vibrate at a frequency that unsettles discordant instruments. And sometimes the noise that rises around you is simply the sound of those out of tune with themselves. The key is not to dim your vibration to match theirs. The key is to stay true to the note that is yours. And those who are ready, truly ready, will find their way to that resonance. And perhaps the most beautiful, and at the same time the most difficult, truth is this. When you awaken, you will begin to attract a very different kind of person, but only after you learn to stop rescuing the ones who refuse to awaken themselves. For so long, you have mistaken your compassion for a calling. You believed that understanding someone meant you were responsible for them. You thought that seeing their pain meant you were meant to heal it. But compassion is not the same as obligation, and love is not the same as sacrifice. You see, when you awaken, you stop confusing empathy with endurance. You stop mistaking someone's chaos for depth. You stop imagining that your ability to forgive endlessly is a virtue. It is not. It is a leash someone else holds. And the moment you see this, truly see it, something extraordinary happens. You stop attracting the wrong people. Not because they stop coming, but because you stop opening the door. You begin to sense, even in silence, who approaches you as a fellow traveler and who approaches you as a thief in need of a home they refuse to build within themselves. And then the attraction shifts, not in an instant, but in a gradual, gentle reorientation of your being. For awakening is not merely a change in how you see the world. It is a change in what you allow in your world. You begin to understand that the awakened are not meant to save others. They are meant to inspire others, to remind them that they too contain a flame. But no flame survives if used to ignite every damp piece of wood that comes its way. There is a subtle but powerful movement within you that says, I can walk with you, but I cannot walk for you. I can show you the door, but I will not drag you through it. I can shine, but I will not burn myself to warm someone unwilling to kindle their own fire. And this clarity is, in its essence, freedom. But let us return to the deeper mystery, why the awakened so often draw the wounded, the manipulative, the lost, the toxic. Because awakening disturbs the architecture of illusion. It shakes walls that were never stable, opens windows into rooms people avoided for years, and reminds others of the discomfort they buried long ago. The awakened become a sort of psychological earthquake, not aggressive, not intentional, just inevitable. But here is the insight I wish to leave you with. The wrong people come so the right boundaries can be born. The wrong people come so the awakened can learn the art of discernment. The wrong people come so you can finally stop trying to be the savior of souls that don't want salvation. And the moment you learn this lesson, not intellectually but in your marrow, you attract differently. You no longer glow with the soft desperation of someone hoping to be understood. You radiate with the peaceful indifference of someone who understands themselves. And that glow, that serene, effortless, unhurried glow, does not attract the wounded looking for a crutch. It attracts the awakened looking for a companion. For like recognizes like. It always has. The only difference is that now you can recognize it too. But let us go deeper still. When the awakened encounter the wrong people, there is often an echo of loneliness, a sense of being misunderstood, misread, mistaken for something softer or more malleable. You feel as though others grasp at your light without ever seeing your soul. But this is not a curse. It is a rite of passage. Every awakened being must walk through the valley of misrecognition, must face the shadow of misplaced devotion, must stand firm against the gentle seduction of becoming someone's emotional caretaker. Because it is only through this valley that you learn to say, no, not with anger, not with fear, but with the quiet power of someone who knows their worth. And the moment that no becomes natural, the world rearranges itself. You begin to meet those who do not want to feed off your energy, but harmonize with it. People who do not fear your depth, but swim in it effortlessly. People who do not cling to you, but walk beside you. Two flames, not one consuming the other. This, my friend, is what awaits you beyond the confusion. Beyond the pattern, beyond the exhaustion of attracting the wrong souls, you will find your resonance. But only when you cease trying to be a refuge for storms you did not create. For the awakened draw many, but they choose few. And this choosing, this quiet, sacred choosing, is what transforms your journey from a series of painful encounters into a path lined with companions who mirror your authenticity. Now let me leave you with this final reflection. If you find yourself attracting the wrong people, do not question your light. Question your willingness to dim it. For the world is full of those who seek brightness, but very few who want to open their eyes in its presence. Let your light remain. Let your truth remain. Let your awareness remain. And those who are meant to walk with you will walk at your pace, not pull you backward. Those who are meant to understand you will not need explanations. And those who are meant to love you will not fear your clarity. They will rise to meet it. So shine not for others, but because it is your nature. And in doing so, you will no longer attract the wrong people. You will simply illuminate them and keep walking.